Hello, hello, everyone. Happy Wednesday. We are back with this week's episode of Air Domo, talking about global properties. And every day it feels like I get this question. And so we wanted to cover it today, but it says, I can't decide between two countries. And so today we're going to dive deep and we're going to cover that. I'm Stephanie Gillison. I'm here with Hannah Maverick. You ready to dive in, Hannah?
I'm so ready. And I love this topic because it really removes the overwhelm. Because when buyers don't have a framework, every option feels equally good or equally risky. So today we'll break down a repeatable comparison system that helps you evaluate on two countries clearly, whether you're choosing between lifestyle destinations or investment markets, or you're just planning your long-term global strategy.
Absolutely. I love it.
Perfect. Let's dive in then. Um, so, Stephanie, and you said this before, buyers always ask you, why do they get stuck when they're choosing between two countries?
Because they're comparing inconsistently, right? And I think we fall into that trap with a lot of things more than just countries. But, they'll compare lifestyle in one country, taxes in another, prices in a third potentially, but they're not looking at it side by side, the full picture side by side, right? You've got to think about what is important. What is the structure of why you're buying in the first place? What's number 1 on the list, what's number 2 on the list, what's number 3 on the list, and then let's take the two places and compare them side by side, and let's assess that way. And that's what the problem is that people get lost in the different destinations. They might look at Costa Rica and say, oh, but I love the fact that I'm going to be able to put my feet in the Pacific Ocean and see the whales breed in the fall. But then I love, the Bahamas because the waters are shallow and I'm going to be able to snorkel. It's separate, right? And so you've got to compare apples to apples. And so buyers rely too much on emotion, fear, or outside opinions, and they need to really just go back to the goal of what it is that they're trying to do in the first place. Make sense?
Exactly. And they should actually be using the same criteria every time so that the decision becomes logical and not overwhelming. And I think that's where hi Cash. And I think that's where people either delay for years or they just rush into the wrong choice.
Absolutely. That is so true. I mean, that it goes to show us. And, again, we do that in so many different areas of our lives. And so it's only natural that they're doing it when they're comparing countries.
Exactly. So let's jump into what's the first step before they even start comparing the countries? What do they do first?
Well, you've got to define who you are as a buyer before even considering where you're going to, consider buying, right? Are you buying for lifestyle, investment, or both? Are you going to live there full time, part time, or rarely go? Are you buying because you want to make money? You want to have rental income, or are you buying to hold on to it to make long term appreciation? Is residency important or is long term mobility important? Okay. Two buyers can look at the same country and reach totally different conclusions because they have completely different goals. It happens all the time. Somebody like me, I might honestly, for me, I want to buy and I want the property to pay for itself. And then I want to go and spend 2 months there and basically have never paid a dime to stay there for 2 months, right? That's who Stephanie is. But somebody else might want to purchase that property because they need residency in that country, whereas to me that may not matter. So you got to clarify that first and then compare second. That's what's most important.
Yeah, and that completely makes sense. And actually, that kind of questioning is what we do with our buyers first to understand what the best property is for them, is to understand what do they actually want. So I think this step alone saves buyers from choosing a country that really looks great on paper, but doesn't actually fit their life. So
Exactly.
that makes a lot of sense. Yeah. So once those goals are clear, what's the first category buyers are comparing?
Well, lifestyle and access, because if you won't use the property, then obviously nothing else is going to matter, right? So you're going to compare climate and seasonality, travel time, flight connectivity, healthcare quality, safety, political stability, community, whether you're expat, local, or mixed. You've got to really ask yourself that question. Are you realistically going to spend time here? Because if that answer is no, it's not going to be the right country, even if the numbers look good. I mean, honestly, that makes complete sense. If you're never going to realistically spend time there, then that answer is no.
That is the important reality check of fantasy versus real life that we all sometimes need. So definitely need to do that first. So let's talk numbers. What should buyers compare financially?
Well, you've got to think about this is where the buyers need to be extremely disciplined. We all need to be disciplined when it comes to the math and it comes to the money, right? So you've got to compare both countries across entry prices, historical appreciation, rental demand, and seasonality if you're looking to have an income producing property, but also rental regulation in that same boat. Ongoing costs. What are the yearly taxes? Is there an HOA fee? What is the cost of maintenance for that property? You're not asking which country is cheaper. You're asking which country makes sense for my strategy, right? A higher price market may be safer, whereas a lower price market may offer more upside, but it could also offer more risk. So it just really depends. And you've got to think about that to weigh those options. A lower price property upfront might cost you more money in the long run.
And this is where data matters more than opinions, right? So when it comes to things like that, stepping into the legal and ownership structure, this is where buyers often get nervous, the legal part of it. So how should they compare countries when it comes to that?
We've got to do that side by side comparison again. We've got to truly look at the fact of, can foreigners hold freehold or only leasehold, right? Are there ownership caps or restricted zones that they can buy in? How transparent is the title system, right? What are the resale and the inheritance rules? Look, a country can be beautiful, it can be profitable, but if ownership is complex or unclear, it may not be the right fit for certain buyers, or it may not even be worth the hassle or worth the process. Okay. Legal simplicity often equals peace of mind. And because there are when we are covering, and, if you go to our YouTube and you go back to our live videos, we have covered so many phenomenal places where we already have listings on Airdomo. And we talk about residency. We talk about the ease of ownership, because a lot of these countries and a lot of these islands, that is exactly what they're saying. They're raising their hand saying, we want you to come and invest here. So we're going to make it easy for you to come and be protected and be an owner here. And so those are the places that you want to truly look for. If they're saying, oh, we're closed, we don't really want you here, but you're seeing that a house is 300,000 US dollars and it's just unbelievably cheap and you can afford it, but they don't really want you there. Look, it's not worth it. Things are cheap for a reason. Make sense?
Exactly.
You pay for what you get. If nobody can own it, obviously it's cheap for a reason.
Yeah, so like you said, the legal simplicity often equals a peace of mind, and that peace of mind is priceless when you're buying abroad because things can get tricky real fast. So on that note, moving into residency and tax and long-term benefits, what about the long-term picture? What are those residency and tax considerations?
Well, this is where you got to think like a global planner, okay? You've got to compare the residency or visa pathways, minimum investment thresholds, right? We were on a call with Cyprus yesterday, and the minimum purchase price there in order to get residency is 300,000. So you got to look at that minimum investment threshold. Rental income taxes. Are you going to be taxed on that income? Is there capital gains tax? Is there inheritance implications? Look, sometimes the better country isn't the one with the highest yield, but the ones that gives you the most flexibility, mobility, and future options. And there is a lot of countries out there that don't charge you taxes at all. And so if you're looking for those benefits, there's a lot of those out there for you. So, it's again, you've got to think like a global planner. And what I mean by a global planner is you've got to think like a financial planner to an extent, where you've got to put your CPA hat on and your wealth advisor hat on.
Exactly. And it's a big mindset shift as well, buying
Yeah.
for options and not just returns. Definitely. Now, the topic that I really like discussing is risk. How should buyers compare countries when it comes to risk?
Well, you've got to always think about exit strategy. Look, people come to me all the time. Oh, well, we're never going to sell. We don't care. No, no, no. You don't know. You always have to include your exit plan. Even if you have no plan on exiting, you need to go ahead and just prepare, because nobody knows what's going to happen next year, 5 years, or 10 years from now. So you need to say, who's going to buy this property after me? Is demand local? Is it regional, or is it international? Is the market liquid, or is it niche? How easy is it to resale as a foreigner, right? If one country has strong resale demand and the other doesn't, that matters, even if both look great today. Things are going to change. And so again, that's what we do here at Airdomo, is we're looking at those projections. Last week we talked about what are going to be the booming markets for 2026, and we covered the top 5. And so we're constantly studying that so we can help you gauge what that's going to look like in the future.
And I think it's also important to say that we're the ones that will sit with you and ask these questions and explore these questions, because most buyers never ask themselves these until it's too late. So that's why I'm glad we're going through all of this and that we do that with all of our clients always, because we don't want it to be too late.
Look,
Um,
I had an email last week, and Hannah, I think you saw it come through our social media. I screenshotted it to you. And a gentleman said, I have a deposit on a condo, and I'm not going to say where. And I replied and said, have you investigated on how you're going to purchase in that country? And he said, what do you mean? He's already wired a $180,000 deposit, and he has no idea what the process is to purchase in that country. And let me tell you something. It is an alien leasehold application process that can take up to 8 months. And it freaked him out when I told him that. But that's why you call Airdomo first.
exactly. It gets scary. That definitely does. So putting it all together, the entire playbook we talked about now, how do buyers actually use this in real life?
Well, again, let's go back to creating that comparison table, making a list, right? The same categories, same questions, the same scoring mechanisms. You've got to rate each country based on what is most important to you: lifestyle fit, financials, legal clarity, residency benefits, risk, and exit strategies. Look, the country that's going to best align with your biggest priorities is going to be the one that wins. The beauty of this system is that you're going to be able to reuse it for future purchases as well. We covered how do you become a global strategic buyer and own in multiple countries. Well, this is the exact plan that's going to get you there as well, is being smart on that first purchase.
Suddenly, then the decision will feel calm and it won't feel overwhelming. It's all about actually doing the research and learning, which we will do with you. So, Stephanie, thank you. This framework is actually so powerful because it puts the buyer back in control, which is what everyone wants, because you're spending your money, right? It's for your hard-earned money, and it's usually not a small amount. So, for everyone that's watching, if you are currently choosing between any two countries or even two properties and want help applying this playbook, please do reach out to us. You can book your Airdomo concierge call on our website, And you can also explore all of our vetted global opportunities there. Reach out to us and we'll do the side by side guidance with you. But I also did want to say next week we will be skipping the webinar because it is Christmas Eve next Wednesday. For everyone celebrating, happy holidays, Merry Christmas. And we're so excited to be right back with you the following week. Stephanie, thank you. This one was amazing.
Thank you all. Merry Christmas. Happy holidays. See you soon.
Bye.